Hey everybody, I am ARMR, and what I watched today is Reboot, Season 1, Episode 3, The Quick and the Fed. We open on Megabyte's latest scheme, a giant electromagnet. Those things are pretty bad for computers. How did he build one inside a computer? I'm overthinking it. Anyway, Megabyte activates his magnet, and it starts tearing a hole in mainframe sky. And the virus right now is just going like, okay, this will open my path to the supercomputer. More systems, more power. More influence for me! Naturally, Bob shows up to save the day while Megabyte is busy monologuing. He's chased down by a bunch of Megabyte's goon squad, who are riding like two to a zip board, and it looks kind of funny, but they're the smaller kind of sprite, and it works size-wise. And it is a funny visual just seeing a bunch of them crowded on these boards. Now, Bob, being our hero, reverses his own board, flies under the goons, and snatches their boards away, sending them plummeting to the ground. If I remember from later, they do explain at some point that these are regular sprites that Megabyte has infected with his virus. So they're not really responsible for their actions in the classic sense. They're more being... Their minds are controlled by Megabyte at this point, and it's hard... I don't know if it's ever actually established if they understand what they're doing, or if they are just mindless drones for his use yet right now. Anyhow, after he does this, Megabyte, he's mad, of course, and he brings his legs out, and we see that he keeps them in a little compartment nearby, like a pair of pants. So when he's in his chair, he's not actually attached to his legs in any way, which could be a bit of a weakness. I mean, it's an awesome hover chair, but it could be a bit of weakness. So he's about to engage Bob personally, and our hero, the Guardian, topples his magnificent magnet. Megabyte, now squeezed into his skinny legs, and mad as hell, bounds up the magnet to confront Bob. Right before Megabyte strikes Bob, we see Bob store a little magnet object in a safe compartment on his belt. Apparently this is the power behind this huge magnet tower, this tiny little magnet. Which, admittedly, in this computer world, things are often more symbols than they are actual objects. What they represent is more important than what they actually, look like. Well, I guess that's a mis way of saying it. What they look like is more important than their physicality, really. Because a little magnet like that was able to power this huge super magnet that was tearing a hole in their reality. Naturally, Bob escapes Megabyte and makes his way to the actual plot of the episode, MacGuffin in tow. It's here we get a detailed look at the inner workings of Dot's Diner, starting with Cecil, her waiter, it's sort of TV-shaped guy, choosing where to seat Enzo and Bob, based on their likelihood to tip, among other factors. Then that the drinks are delivered via a racetrack. Carefully your drink doesn't pass you by, huh? Which Bob's actually does, passes him by and goes right out the door. He's like, huh, Dot's Diner. Fastest food in mainframe. And Bob plops the MacGuffin container down on the table. The magnet in its protected case. The patrons freak out, just like you'd expect sentient programs to in this situation. Bob manages to calm them down by explaining it's shielded, so, there's no danger to them. Nonetheless, Dot advises caution, and, in her usual wisdom, says you should get rid of it right away, since the magnet can essentially kill them as living programs. Bob, instead of leaving right away, lets Enzo give Glitch a try. And when Enzo activates the jackhammer mode, things go belly up, the shielding container pops open, and the MacGuffin does its plot-advancing duties, partially erasing Dot. Bob, in a panic, runs off to Old Man Fong, the wise old program that we saw before, to see how he can save Dot. Again, Fong, makes him try to play, but Bob's not having it. The Pong connection really amuses me because Pong is one of the oldest programs in mainframe, and Pong is one of the oldest computer games. I like that symmetry with the name, the program, and the history. One other thing we find from this kind of from this scene is that the little puck they use for their game has one of those round little mainframer dudes inside. That has to be a crappy job, being Fong's puck. And is there a reason they need him in there? Aside from the joke? Probably not. Who knows, maybe he wasn't supposed to be in there and he was just trying to find a secret place to nap. Following explains now that the magnet accelerated and destabilized Dot's code. So to save Dot, she needs to access some really slow food to balance her out. It kind of made me chuckle that he pushes Bob out the door, declaring, "You don't have all second, you know!" And yeah, it is implied often in this computer world that time has a far different scale to them. A whole second is to them a day. So imagine, like, inside your computer, every second is a day inside your mainframe's life. Which, I don't like imagining that, because usually that means, as the user, I'm a bit of an asshole, but, you know. Anyway, my gaming habits aside, Bob heads down to level 31 to get the food that Dot needs. Before he leaves, Dot tries to tell him something, but in her weakened state, Bob doesn't get the message and he just rushes off, leaving her in Enzo's care. Plus, potentially a mistake on its own. I mean, this is Enzo we're talking about. He heads down to Al's Wait and Eat. It's in a seedier part of mainframe, with some really cool sprite designs in this scene. Which is a really rare, and there's a really rare sight here because we get humanoid sprites that aren't the main characters. By and large, almost none of the humanoid sprites we ever see, like pretty much all of them, are main characters in one way or another. So seeing these ones that aren't main characters just in the background is a rare and really cool sight. So yeah, he goes to the counter and he's like, you know, "I need slow food fast!" No, that's not how it works, Bob. It's slow food. But yeah, the guy at the counter laughs at him too. I don't think we ever get this guy's name, but the eponymous Al is in the back and never seen. Bob takes a number, because, you know, it's like, okay, take a number, we'll get you eventually. His number is 4096. That's not too bad. I mean, they just got to number 3. Oops. As Bob waits, we momentarily access Megabyte, telling Hack and Slash to go after him. And then we return to our Guardian heroically waiting his turn, serving us up the corny old joke about 7 eating 9, but this time told with an anthropomorphic 7 that seems oddly full now. And they even have a snare drum in this scene. Like, they know how bad the joke is, and they're just like, okay, we're gonna go whole hog. I gotta respect them for that. Bob loses his patience, but is shut down by the guy at the counter. After all, a partner is riding his back for a big takeout order. Al has a really slow processing speed, and there are plenty of other customers. Bob tries begging a customer for his food, but as this is happening, Hack and Slash show up, eager to take the magnet back and give it back to Megabyte. Naturally, Bob easily outwits the dimwits, and again, as the game starts, Bob makes it into the game while the idiots smash against the cube's side. He uses a really cool stalling tactic. He just makes a vid window show up in front of them. They're stupid enough to stop and keep talking while he makes his way. So, yeah, I like how clever Bob is as a hero. Yeah, some of his moves are pretty corny here in the early episodes, but it's still... He's smart, he's resourceful, he's clever, he doesn't resort to, like... He doesn't resort to cliches, he doesn't resort to violence, he often uses his brain and his wits to get out of situations. Yeah, he can handle himself in most fights, but more often than not, it's his brains that gets him out of it, not his brawn. Which in a series based in a computer world kind of makes sense. Bob recognizes the game as Castle's like, "Ah!" He's about to say the last word, but he gets just punched by the user. And as this is happening, a voice that sounds like Dot's rings out from the nearby castle, calling for rescue. The user has a head start, but Bob grabs a dragon to close the gap. The user attempts to dragon jack Bob, but to no avail, though another dragon catches the user and lets him start attacking Bob. So this game seems to really be helping the user right now. Thankfully, Bob's dragon comes equipped with Al! He whips up some tasting fire of his own, eventually, helping Bob to bypass the user. And it's actually a really cool scene as they joust on the dragons, and then Bob uses some glitch command that I couldn't quite hear to basically teleport into the next area. Bob awakens a guardian, basically like a mindless unit within the game. Not a sprite, but something that lives in the game world. Later, they introduced the concept of game sprites, but this is a much earlier version. It doesn't have sentience, it just follows its program. It just follows, its exact actions. He accidentally activates it by grabbing a sword that was buried in its ribcage. Bob flounders with his sword. He has no idea how to fight with one. And at least at this stage, it doesn't seem that the games download them with skills when they get their outfits, just the outfit and equipment they need. And in the end, he doesn't defeat the skeleton with brute force, but with his clever mind once again. He basically shoves the glitch into the skeleton's ribcage, and it opens a pop-up window, smashing the thing to bits. So like I said, Bob is really intelligent. He's not a physical fighter type. He is your clever, figure it out, do something witty. And I love that. At the top of the tower, we find not Dot, but Enzo, in a hilarious long gown that even holds his legs off the floor, and a megaphone that for some reason makes him sound like Dot. I guess so they could explain the misdirect? As Bob asks after her, Dot comes crashing through the window in full armor, fighting the user. It's a pretty awesome thing to note here that Dot is herself a warrior here, not the damsel in distress. She stands on equal footing with Bob. When she rebooted, she got armor, and Enzo, the little kid who can't really fight, got put in the side role. She's not asking for his help with the user. She asks for his help with the user. She doesn't require it, but she could definitely use it. Working together, Dot, Bob, and Enzo win the game and save the day. But yeah, I just love that that Dot so far in this series has this kind of extreme agency. She's written as an equal character to Bob. Her gender is pretty much never brought into it other than Enzo going, "That's my sister." Like, yeah, she's a woman, so what? She's a successful businessman, she can kick ass, and she is smart. And I love her for it. Like, she's a great character. Anyhow, after this, we find out just how Dot got better. I mean, last time we saw her, she was about to fall apart, yet now she's well enough to fight. Well, it turns out that Dot and Al are partners in his business. So as his partners, she was able to vid window for a special delivery. Thus, most of the episode's conflict and tension was from Bob just not listening and rushing off instead of slowing down a bit. Which is kind of an underlying tone with Bob. If Bob just took a little more time and slowed down, he wouldn't have had to rush off to Al's and waste all that time. Admittedly, at the same time, if he had rushed a little more with the magnet earlier, he probably would not have had anything happen in the first place, because he would have gotten to the data dump, or basically the recycling bin, and gotten rid of the magnet. So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I guess when you boil it down, it'd be more like, the lesson, if there was one, would be more like, there are times to slow down, and there are times to speed up. Sometimes you gotta stop and pay attention, and other times you should really just get it done. Anyhow, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.